But yeah,
It reminds me of Andy Peters in the broom cupboard. I keep on thinking I'm going to see Ed the Duck.
I'm not getting the reference, I'm afraid, there.
Oh, no, I mean...
BBC?
Broom cupboard?
BBC?
Yeah, like back in the 80s,
No,
90s.
early 90s, yeah.
90s, Andy Peters used to do, like, on children's TV on BBC One.
Yeah.
He was like the broom cupboard, and he like introduced all the back in the day when like TV had like kids, like a kids couple of hours, like when they got he was like the anchor between all the like cartoons, and they do like little sketches, and he had like a little.
I think even Paul Schofield used to present
Schofield might have been in there, yeah.
Oh, contentious name.
Yeah. Move on.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm going to take it as a compliment, even if I don't quite get the reference.
Yeah, it definitely meant as a compliment.
Childhood memory unlocked.
Oh, nice. I'll take that. That might even be our tidbit for the episode. So I think what I'm going to do is jump straight into the introduction here, having triggered some nostalgia in my audience, because I do look at my analytics, folks. I do know most of you are my age or older, so you will get that reference. But yeah. Whoa, I've completely blanked on what the hell I say there. Yo, how's it going, folks? Welcome to episode 40 of the Simpa Life podcast. I didn't write it down. I'm clearly prepared for this podcast, as I am every fucking week. Nearly 3 years into this, you would have thought I'd be a little bit more professional. However, I'm not. I'm over-caffeinated as usual. I'm a little bit baked, and I'm really excited for today's conversation. We're not going to talk about any news, because as I've said, we're stacking these episodes, and already last week's content is going to come out a week after the thing, so just pretend this is in the ethereal. This isn't relative to right now. It's going to be released next week, which is today for you, which doesn't make sense. But for me, it does, because I'm recording 5 episodes in 3 days. So this is driving me a bit loopy. That's why I can't tell you where we are or what we're doing. So I think we're 140. I think this is March 8th. If it's not, I've screwed up. I apologize. Whatever. You're used to it. You are my audience after all. So without further ado, today's guests are the co-founders of the UK-based alternative media company Leafie, an independent media platform exploring cannabis, psychedelics, and the cultural events that connect them all, or connect us all, sorry. They are Liam O'Dowd and Kevin Dinneen. I apologise if I got your pronunciations wrong there, gentlemen.
Bang on, mate. Well done.
Excellent. How are we doing?
Good, thanks, mate. Good. Well done. Not very often people get O'Dowd right, so top marks on that.
And Dinneen. Well,
so 2 for 2.
We're off to a good start.
Nice one.
I'm on the same over-caffeinated level and slightly baked.
Good.
From Derbyshire.
I'm glad you could be in the same room together. I think it works well, and I think you'll be able to play off each other well, and it'll show the team dynamic. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
But also that Zoom kind of, when people like someone starts saying something, then someone like a split millisecond later starts saying something, then you both wait. And nothing happens. I just couldn't be doing with that. It would stress me out. So yeah, we got together because we thought it would make a smoother episode.
I do believe it will indeed, and I want to compliment you on your setup. And I think for anyone that can't see at home, there is a wonderful neon sign in the back between the two of the Leafie logo. We were discussing the preamble. Yeah, that wall green, that is going to pop. So hopefully this won't be your first and last appearance on the podcast, gentlemen. So next time, look out for that logo, folks. It's going to be...
We've got to have it green by the next time. Well, hopefully by the next time we speak to you, we'll have a proper office again, because we did used to have like a bit of an office space, but we're in transition between it. So yeah, maybe next time we'll be coming live from Leafie HQ.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to shell out so much money on an office at the moment, especially I'm in Derbyshire, you're in Manchester.
Yeah, but yeah, create a space.
We need it.
Yeah, no. Well, best of luck to you guys, and I hope that that can come to fruition. I suppose then let's jump straight into sort of first line of questioning here, which is, I guess I was going to say very interrogatorial. That's not even the word I'm looking for. I was going to interrogate you both and go, who are you and where'd you come from? And that's really not the tone that I was meant to go for there. I don't know why my brain jumped to that. When and how did you both sort of get into the cannabis space, and kind of what brings you here today, as it were, I guess, other than my invite?
Yeah, man. So there's a good story. Well, kind of a bit of a story behind this. So years ago now, Kevin and I have known each other for years. I mean, that's probably the caveat. We've known each other since we were like, 18?
Yeah, I think 2001.
Yeah, so we've known each other for years. Basically, Leafie came about because, long story short, I got my dad on CBD long before it kind of became like a media darling. Back in the day, like before it was kind of like really having that growth stage. I got my dad on CBD for a health condition. And my dad came to see me. I was living in Chamonix for the winter and skiing a lot. And my dad came to see me while he was taking CBD for this health condition. And I'd been out on the slopes all day, and he was like, take some of this, it'll be great for your muscles. And up to this point, I kind of heard of CBD, and I was like, CBD, this weed that doesn't do anything. I'm not interested. And then had it and went skiing the next day, and literally really felt the benefits and all of that. So we started looking into this and thinking like, look, this could be something. We were so ahead of the time. Like this could be something. And we started looking at doing a brand, kind of together. And my background's in marketing, so I kind of looked at it and said, look, it looks like everyone's just buying the same oil from America, putting it in bottles with a different label on and selling it. And I kind of looked at, like all the problems that brands have with like marketing CBD on Facebook and Meta. I was like, look, there's a bit of an opportunity here. No one's really talking about this. Let's, start like a magazine style website talking about it. And then brands can advertise with us. And, instead of us trying to just flog the same thing to everyone, we can, we can do some education. We can get, we're both kind of quite passionate about sort of cannabis and generally drug reform in general. So it could be like, it could lead on to something. And it did.
Yeah.
Basically,
that was at the end of 2018, wasn't it? I came up here and went to that cafe. What was it called? The Moose
Cafe. Yeah. I've still got the notebook where we sat down and we sort of sketched these ideas about having like a website that was like, kind of magazine style, maybe having products on there and all that kind of thing.
And then we launched in March
2000. So
March
really
2019.
Very, very nearly our 5th birthday next month.
Nice.
That's kind of where we got where we were. So we started off with CBD, and then when everyone else started talking about that, it was around COVID actually. I remember it was during COVID, and we wrote an article like speculative, like, could legalizing cannabis pay for basically what, Rishi Sunak was just dishing money out right left and centre. Like, could legalizing cannabis cover the bill? And it was kind of one of the first articles we had that did really went into the thousands.
It's still doing well.
Kind of viral, for the want of a better word. And that was kind of like, because we were umming and ahhing about it for ages, whether to start talking about cannabis. You were like, you wanted to get straight on there.
Yeah.
I was like, hang on, let's just focus on CBD a little bit. We did this one article. I was like, yeah, all right, you win. So yeah, and then psychedelics, obviously, kind of
just a natural transition.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of ummed and ahed about launching a second title that was psychedelics focused. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it Huxley. After bought the domain and everything.
You forgot that.
But then we just thought, no, Leafie's the natural home for it. The people who are interested in cannabis, there's kind of a huge crossover. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the foundation of what we do and where we came from. And, we're just still kind of doing that now. And it's going all right.
Yeah, it's been a really good time, actually, hasn't it?
It's been a journey.
We've had our ups and downs.
Yeah.
It would be, and things could always be better. We could be,
That's true. Anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Anything, you should always try and be, like tomorrow be a little bit better than yesterday, and that all adds up. So yeah, that's kind of.
But we're happy with what we've achieved so far, and we know there's lots more to come.
Excellent. I think a good, quite concise introduction. There's a Japanese concept and a word that is jumping out of my brain. I can't read from this list in my head, but the concept is basically about being 1% better tomorrow than you were today. Do not try and achieve that which seems unachievable immediately. It is to incrementally build yourself up by the small increments. And yeah, it's sort of something that's been adopted into modern Western economics. And so for all capitalists, like, no, you've got to make this huge amounts of money or whatever. You guys have got the passion, and you've got, you're capturing something in the zeitgeist that isn't quite yet understood of how it's going to be monetized or industrialized and corporatized. So don't be disheartened at all if you're looking at competitors and spaces. I mean, given online censorship, the rise of like radical sort of almost fundamental religious zealotism against drugs, there is this kind of DARE 2.0 coming back. Like I said, the corporate capture and all of these different things, I think mean that you're fighting through the fucking forest to find the clearing of the people. But believe me, the people are there. And yeah, Leafie, you guys are killing it SEO wise. You're moving a lot of interesting titles and articles, and you're getting into a lot of circles. And so I think that needs to be, commended and recognized. So
I think that's what sets us apart, that we have some really interesting, slightly off key sometimes articles. We're not obviously we still publish day-to-day news on cannabis, which isn't always massively exciting, reporting on studies, especially with medical conditions, are not everyone's cup of tea, but they're kind of our bread and butter. But some of our contributors, the articles that we have are top notch. Say myself.
Yeah, we wouldn't publish them. I think we've kind of had to develop this policy of like publishing things we want to read, right? And like publishing things that maybe other people aren't writing that we would like to see. And actually, kind of like we've had, as you mentioned, like the online censorship thing is probably our number one challenge, as it is for anyone in this space. But I actually think, in a kind of perverse way, it's been a really important part of our growth, because we've been able to slowly grow. Like we don't have media backgrounds. My background's marketing, so that's kind of why the SEO sometimes does all right. Might send your quote to some of the people I've worked with in the past and just say, look, see, I didn't know what I was on about. But we've had to play the song, and we are playing the slow game. You've heard it probably yourself, like 5 years. When we started 5 years ago, the legalization was 5 years away, and it's 5 years away from today, right? So we know that we're playing a long game of 5 years, at least from whichever day we're publishing, and that that kind of slow kind of progress is actually, it's been beneficial, because we've been able to mature, we've been able to learn, and we've been able to listen as well to kind of what our readers and our community enjoy and like. So yeah, in a way, it's been a bit of it's frustrating sometimes, but it's been a bit of a blessing. It's been a part of the journey, at least. We'll say that much.
Yeah, I think there isn't an established path. We have legacy in our space with companies like High Times. For all, I'm not going to mention my personal thoughts on what's happened over the past several years with it. Weed World, and other sort of publications. You've got new ones like Skunk and Northeast magazine, Leaf magazines and stuff in the States that are sort of emerging. And you can see it's a trial by fire for all of us, because like I said, it's not like jumping in, we're going to do travel journalism. That's set and defined. There isn't these pitfalls, these booby traps and these random gateways you've got to pay to go through. It's not the same trajectory at all. So in your own way, to be able to be introspective and to really adapt on the fly as you're going, I think, as Darwin said, that is the one thing that will keep something alive, is adaptability. It's not strength. It's not anything else. And
adapting, learning, 100%. You hit the nail on the head there with us. Especially one of the challenges, apart from when we focus on medicinal cannabis, most of the things we report on are illegal in nearly all of the world. It's quite a unique position to be in from a journalist, from a media perspective.
Indeed. I mean, it's something that obviously I don't necessarily consider myself a journalist for to be writing for Weed World for quite a bit. I've been published by yourselves and quite a few other outlets. There does seem to be Jesus Christ. My studio is falling apart. We're back. And that's completely just derailed my thought. What the hell were we talking about? Censorship, adapting, magazines.
You said you weren't a journalist, which I disagree. Carry on.
So the level of sort of, oh no, Jesus Christ, give me two seconds, folks. I need to fix this goddamn thing. Let's try to get it. It's supposed to be wedged quite precariously between two objects. And for 100 episodes, it's been fine, or whatever it is, it's been fine. But this week, it wants to jump off the goddamn wall. Although it has just jumped me back onto my train of thought, which is, I don't consider myself necessarily to be a journalist, but as someone who cares and operates sort of within the space and has got a real, passion, a real, spiritual obligation towards drug reform, given the life that I've lived and continue to lead, the demise of Vice recently and their kind of really unique form of journalism, I think you guys can step in somewhere into a space to cover that. And I think that's what you're doing by doing it. Vice showed that journalism is still protected in most spaces. Again, for all of its censorship and whatever else, there's a difference between being at a space and reporting on a crime and being an accessory to said crime. And I think more and more people have an appetite. They're almost insatiable. I don't know if you look through fucking Instagram or TikTok, whatever platform you're on, and the For You and how extreme that can get of content and this kind of rabbit holes you can get taken down. There's an appetite for it. I think as you guys are adapting on the fly and you're putting your toes in different waters, you say, and you can tell where you want to submerge and, you know, where you're done. And I think that adaptability is going to serve you well in the medium to long term, because if Germany goes as it's, you know, stating that it's looking like it could go, there is going to be this renaissance, this desire of information. And the American market is so captured. Again, no offense to my friends in publishing in the American cannabis media, but it's so industry focused. It's so moving with the block. It's not representing the culture. It's not trying to create community, as you say. So again, I think that's something to be sort of celebrated. So yeah, again, well done.
Yeah, I mean, you raise an interesting point about Vice, because I know they get a lot of, they used to get a lot of stick, and I'm talking about the journalism and the individual contributors, not the management and that shit show. But I know it's quite easy to hate on Vice, but what they did, I mean, with drugs and broader journalism, they really opened up what was possible in terms of publishing content online and reaching audiences, not just talking about drugs, you know, like kind of talking about, especially in the early days, you know, Vice would cover conflicts that people didn't know about, that you wouldn't hear about on, you know, the BBC or Sky News and things like that. Mm-hmm. They would cover, you know, they gave a huge platform to, like, you know, LGBTQ like writers who couldn't get their foot in the door of established media and things like that. And, you know, it's funny because it's very hard not to talk about kind of what we do and what we aspire to do without kind of, you know, mentioning Vice. And we don't want to be Vice, but, you know, we do feel like they did open up a bit of a pathway for people like us. You know,
we've definitely enjoyed Vice.
You know, I've loved some of the things I've done Vice. I think they've done an enormous service to making journalism more accessible to not just to writers but to people. You know, not everyone wants to read a stuffy formal Guardian, you know, article, you know, to learn about something that they know or they need to know. But, you know, it's sad that they've gone. But yeah, in a sort of kind of sad way, it does kind of open up a little bit of a space for us to kind of maybe cover more broader subjects that kind of overlap with the core of cannabis and psychedelics, like culture and just alternative wellness, you know, not just kind of like woo stuff, but, you know, kind of people are really buying into, you know, things like adaptogens and mushrooms and, you know, kind of functional mushrooms specifically, and, you know, kind of like, you know, different ways of managing their health, you know, things like, you know, the kind of the bit bro science, but, you know, kind of like ice baths and Wim Hof breathing and meditation and yoga and all of these kind of things, they all overlap. And yeah, unfortunate for Vice and the people that write for it, but kind of, you know, we are looking at that and thinking, well, people do want that content. And, you know, there's a gap to fill it.
We need to help people.
Yeah, you know, people need to educate. You know, people want the information from sources they can trust, and hopefully we can kind of fill in a few of the gaps that Vice leaves behind.
Yeah, I think, as you say, one of the things that Vice did so well was covering the spaces where the spotlights of society's attention overlap in that Venn diagram. Yeah. And so it wasn't just covering, oh, this is an LGBTQ thing, this is then that plus conflict or plus drugs or plus social environmental issues. Do you know, there was always an angle of multiple different demographics and the crossover between. And I think that was so important because it naturally draws unity. It shows that people from disparate communities and activists and sort of advocates of different movements can share that synergy in that space. And I think that's something that we see, unfortunately, again, not to diss the American sort of media, but it's very captured, like you say, that it's very sort of almost, I use the term hippy dippy, and I say this with love. Like, I consider myself to be quite hippy dippy in various times. You know, I'm barefoot in the woods and sleep under trees and take drugs by fire. I'm very quite hippy dippy. But they've kind of gone one way, and we're hemp and we're spiritual and we're whatever, and we don't talk about skunk and drugs, and do you know what I mean? And then there's people who've gone, no, we're health and wellness, and so yeah, we don't talk about THC. You know, we're because of like WADA and rules like that. And I mean, they're getting, cannabis is getting torn apart, psychedelics getting torn apart and put into these narrow pre-ordained avenues, and then they're only allowed to be spoke of in relation to that. There isn't that intersectionality. So again, it's why sites like yourself, are so important to create that space for, especially, as you say, cultural representation, the actual lived and living experience of these people to comment it. It's not just, oh, I'm an accredited journalist, I'm going to go into this space, because they won't understand it. They won't get it. They're not their class, not their background, not their experience. It's, as you say, it's to create and highlight a space to champion the growth of the creative people in these spaces, because if there's nothing else, we have an overabundance of creative people in the drug space. We just need, like I say, outlets.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And like you say, I think that kind of having that true representation is really important. It's something we've tried to do a bit of. I mean, kind of one of the visions we've had for Leafie since sort of, day one, was kind of trying to cover, especially things like cannabis, from a broader angle, and maybe kind of like trying to diversify from that, especially media perceived or public perceived stereotype of what a cannabis consumer is, or what a stoner is, if you want to, kind of boil it down. Like there is always going to be a perceived impression of, they're a typical stoner. And, like, so one of the things that we did very early on when we were hiring writers is, to try and get more female voices on the website, because, there are loads of bros writing about weed, arguing on forums about, whether 12-12 or 13-11 is the best life cycle, living soil versus quad and all that kind of thing. And there's that space exists for that community, and those people are well catered for. But if you're like a kind of a middle-aged or a young woman who loves weed, but you don't really care about that side of it, there wasn't really a lot of space for those kind of people, but they exist in their droves, right? Like you look at America and, in states post-legalization in Canada, like usually fastest growing sectors are like over 50s or, kind of young Gen Z females. The kind of consumption methods tend to spike are like edibles and drinks because they're accessible. And so, we've always tried to make Leafie look and feel and be a space for those people who might love weed or might, find great benefits from cannabis and its medicinal properties, or might be microdosing or using psychedelics for creativity or for anxiety or whatever, want to do these things, but then go to like what would be the traditional stoner out there and like feel like, well, this is for me.
Not feel massively included.
Yeah, because they don't see themselves represented on that side. So, we obviously the stuff we write caters for that traditional community as well. And, like they're a core part of our community and audience. But we've always tried to make
we want to bring people in.
Yeah, we want to bring people in. And I think that's really important for like
we don't buy
the arguments of legalization, right? We don't need to convince.
Yeah, it's not just for stoners.
Yeah, we don't need to convince people who already smoke weed day in, day out that, legalization needs to happen, because they're well on board with that. But, but there's plenty of people that could easily either be convinced or already on that same side, but they don't fit into that demographic. So if we can educate them and entertain them and get them on board with any kind of, meaningful progress, you kind of create like a catalyst. And that's kind of, that's something we've always wanted to do and we're doing more of now.
Yeah, exactly that. It's irrelevant how many outports you've got if you've only got a couple of imports. The filter of that system will naturally taint the intention and the quality of the product you're providing in the articles and the content. So I think, that's greatly important. I think it's something that is under highlighted, and it is still difficult in the space of the most of it. I mean, this ends up, I think I've done 20 episodes with dudes in a row now. It just kind of falls to this because of yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was very much a sausage fest. I'm wearing a fucking Fight Club t-shirt as well. Obviously, this looks optically quite bad, but my comment stands in the States, as you say, they were always there. The women were always there. Most of the people that we think of as big names, who do you think helped them in their gardens? Who do you think they went home to and spoke to about it for 17 hours? It was their missus. Do you know what I mean? It was, they helped intricately. There's a lot of female breeders as well that don't get the credit. They'll do the work and then they'll go to a more established figure and they'll basically front it because the woman won't get the respect because of the underlying misogyny, which I think comes as a hangover of prohibition when there was a danger of it, if ultimately, not without getting sexist or misogynist, and I'm sorry if I do, I'll try and clarify my point as I go, but traditionally more women to be at home raising the kids. The men are then targeted because of then the system's perception. The courts don't want to send the women to prison with the kids. So if the house gets raided, the dude takes responsibility, the guy's gone. So you end up with the fathers removed from it. So the women end up often running supply and owning those lines while the guy's inside anyway. So they equally have this share to the market. But also just create a disproportionate thing that as legalization then kicks in, all the bros have got in their mind all this legacy and all this experience because they've been out and proud, whereas the women don't because it wasn't safe for them. You know, it wasn't safe for your average woman and just go pick up 20 bags from a random dealer. Do you know what I mean? It's a different environment. There's so many different dynamics that have to go into their experience of the cannabis culture and space, both post and pre legalization, liberalization, whatever we want to sort of term it as. So I think, yeah, to have those voices, it's a lighthouse in darkness for the others that are still scared, especially in the UK where the law is still so brutal. Do you know what I mean? We like to think that we're soft touch, but dependent on your colour, your class, your creed, whatever your background, if you're in the wrong space with the wrong cop, you twin that with the wrong judge, you're fucked. It's an absurd state. So yeah, bringing genuine voices to the space, I think is hyper important because there's so much. I'll say this as someone who runs a podcast of the irony, echo chambers that are generated within the media space. And we all think, you know, we're patting each other on the back and going, yeah, we're doing real good here. So I think, as you said before about, you know, publishing what you want to see and what you want to read, I think that's a great philosophy to have. And by bringing on these other voices, as you say, that allows you to adapt and see their needs and their wants. So then you can widen your own scope. So I think it's just going to go from strength to strength, as I think it is and has thus far.
Yeah, definitely getting there. I mean, I do think of like kind of, you know, to give cannabis its dues as an industry. Maybe in the UK, maybe I see more of it because of the people that we kind of
associate with a lot of women, don't we?
Yeah, but there is kind of like there's a good strong movement. I think because it is, you know, let's face it, anything cannabis industry wise in the UK, as it's in its early stages, its nascent stages, there is a kind of a strong, you know, there's like these communities of women that are, you know, looking out for each other and trying to grow themselves, you know, like kind of Becca Ellen Tapp, she's got like a little bit of a thing going on at the minute, I think it is, and she's got kind of like a network of kind of women, I forget the name of it now. But, you know, kind of people who are in the industry trying to bring, and, you know, and that's quite good because it does kind of bring about that change. Because if people see it from, you know, what are essentially the early stages really of what we have in terms of medical cannabis at least, to see kind of there be like a strong from the ground up movement of people kind of coming together and saying like, look, let's make sure this doesn't just turn into a bro fest like it, you know, kind of can do in America. You know, like I think if, you know, to give the UK its dues, there is an element of like people trying to do that from day one, which is good to see. I mean,
to be different, to be more inclusive to all genders, we'd have to buck the trend to all industries. All industries are headed by men. I'm not saying that's the right thing. It's just unfortunately how it is and how it has been for a long time.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think you
work hard.
You're already in a vessel that's moving through controversial waters. You're already sort of challenging paradigms, and
it's battles to fight.
yeah. So it's like I said, that's where that intersectionality comes from again, because then people come from different disparate backgrounds to recognize the common struggle, and that's where I've sort of held my tongue a couple of times on sort of the word of legalization. But of bringing us together to, as you say, to make sure that all parties are represented. And it's very much looking like legalization is looking that way towards capital and doesn't look that way towards culture. And I think that's why we're seeing sort of movements of these disparate communities. I mean, there is a bit of a bounce back in the States. So during COVID, it got real fucking bad. Black and ethnic minority ownership of dispensaries fell off a cliff. Women participation within the industry also fell off a cliff. Again, there's something that could be extrapolated there about childcare. But if you could adjust for that metric, there was an issue. It's like I said, it's starting to sort of bounce back now, but it's, let's say, creating a level playing field for an authentic rise. there will always and should always be then a club that's run by a woman and has got more of a feminine touch. There'll always be a trapper underground kind of club and everything in between. You know, you'll end up with your 1960s hip. You think of your coffee shops of Amsterdam and the many ways that they form. They formed because although the law was never changed, there was a level playing field created under a discretion. And I think that's kind of what I want to see, ideally, here in the UK, is that kind of what the states are now looking at, ironically, and trying to put the momentum in is deschedule and decriminalization to challenge this reschedulization lobby, which is looking to basically medicalize the whole of cannabis. But yeah, again, you're doing what you can where you can. It's the same as anybody. Giving somebody the opportunity in that space can inspire them to go and start something else. There's no such thing as competition really in this space right now because, as you say, it's so nascent, it's so new. You know, think of how many pubs there used to be at the height of the population of the popularity of drinking. You couldn't walk 3 streets without walking into 4 pubs. Do you know what I mean? I just want to see us get off the start that way. Sorry, go on.
So I think my town had the most amount of pubs and chip shops per capita in the whole.
Well, again, and I want to see in a lot of ways these come back. I mean, I quite often pitch. I mean, let me know what you think of this idea. I've said it a few times on the podcast, but I think pubs should become multi-drug consumption rooms.
Oh,
so on a Friday.
That's what they were.
Oh, we know they are. You know, anybody with any experience knows that they are. But I mean, in the sense that, say, just Friday, Saturday, they're alcohol. Do you know what I mean? Maybe we can talk about cocaine and other drugs slightly later down the line. But that Monday to Friday, Thursday, the way to generate that revenue and use that space that already has toilets, often food facilities, pool tables, jukeboxes, dartboards, all the facilities you'd kind of want to put in a cannabis club. Do you know what I mean? And most of them often have good extraction, so you could use these spaces.
It's a really good point because I've mentioned to Liam a few times when we go to Barcelona and when I've been to Amsterdam, smoking weed for me is just, I do that anyway. Okay, I am going to do it. If I go to a place to smoke weed, i.e. a cannabis club in Barcelona, I've had one joint, and then I'll force another joint down me, which I wouldn't normally do, but that's because I'm in this place where everyone else is smoking. But that's it. I don't want anything else. Obviously, if you're going out to have a drink, I know there's people who don't drink, and I know I might not drink as responsibly as I should do. So, you know, drink responsibly, folks. But if I'm going to have a drink, at least I can keep on drinking. You know, with cannabis, 2 joints, and I smoke big joints. Very big joints. So really, I'm done after 2 joints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, it's horses for courses, and I think this is what I'm not going to name the club because obviously there is a potential crackdown looming, and the new vice mayor wants to obliterate. What did he say? I think obliterate was the word he used. He wants to decimate and get rid of all of the cannabis clubs in Barcelona. There is some of the clubs that are now going like, oh, they've got a functional cocktail bar. So there is alcohol plus cannabis in the same club.
And we went to one last year. We're probably talking about the same one. It was amazing. And that was my point. To have just smoking could be a bit restrictive, especially for someone like me. We need to have drinking, music, definitely food. Definitely food.
I mean, it's funny you say that about pubs, actually, right? So at the minute in Manchester, there's the guy he's our nighttime star, Sasha Lord. He runs Warehouse Project, and
I've been trying to get him on the podcast. I've been messed up.
Oh, nice, right? So, well, I mean, he's a complete teetotaler and doesn't touch anything, I believe. But he's an interesting guy. I mean, some strong opinions about him in Manchester. Some mostly positive, and quite a few that seem to think he's ruining the nightlife. I disagree, but that's beside the point. Anyway, he's on a bit of a mission now as the nighttime czar of Greater Manchester to save hospitality. And, you know, I've kind of dropped a few comments underneath, like, why don't you just like legalize weed or decriminalize it? Because, you know, I mean, like you say, pubs could just have a weed room at the back, you know, or allow it across the whole venue, depending on how their clientele, you know, sees it and what their optics and preferences are. But equally, like, you know, Manchester, it always pops to mind when people talk about, like, you know, how the UK could allow adults to consume cannabis responsibly and safely. And I think, you know, like going to Manchester Northern Quarter, you know, you've got trendy cocktail bars. We've got like loads of these ones that are like speakeasy style, like one that's disguised as a pawn shop, and one that's behind like you go through into a laundrette and through like a fake, you know, kind of laundromat. But, you know, using that British, very uniquely, I think, British creativity that we have to create cannabis consumption clubs that are, they're not just, kind of like a disused cafeteria. They could be like really cozy, really comfy, really trendy, really interesting. As you say, have like, kind of food and cocktails and smoothies and just more, like not just, this isn't just a place to get weed, but a place to come, enjoy cannabis, spend like your afternoon or your evening. And I think the Brits could do something like absolutely in that space. I think we could lead the world, because we create, I've been around lots of places and we have some of the coolest bars in this country, like real innovation and creativity with great vibes and thought behind like the cocktail menus and the decor and generally, like people trying to create an experience as you walk in. Just apply cannabis to that mentality. Man, we'd do something amazing in this country. But
100%. I mean, the way if somebody like, I don't know, Starmer wins the next election and he has one of those like fucking Dickensian dreams and he's like, 3 ghosts visited me and talked about weed and fucking hell, and he rings us up and he goes, Simpa, what am I doing? Obviously, if I go like ideals, we can't get through that because we have to deal with the political public. I couldn't just flip the switch as much as I'd want to. I'd be like, all right, what we're going to do is select several cities around the country. Offhand, I'd go pick a couple of boroughs in London. We'll go somewhere in Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, somewhere in like the northeast and the southwest. Just kind of pilot projects. Like I said, convert some disused pubs and spaces and run them at different scales. One of them is purely just a cannabis club. One's a multi-use space. One's a this. Do you know what I mean? And accrue that data through research and development, which could be done through licensing under the Home Office. Under the current legislation, we could go do exactly what has happened in Bern in Switzerland, what's about to happen in Tilburg and Breda, I tripped over my own tongue there, in Amsterdam, these research projects. So there is a means by which we could then accrue this data to prove that model. And like I said, once we can prove that, all right, we had 10,000 people consume cannabis over 6 months, actually violence went down within a 2-mile radius. The chip shop within fucking a mile that went through the roof. McDonald's profits went through the roof or whatever. And we could see that physical data. That's the issue that we've got, is all the data and everything that we're proving at the minute is just going to help support GW's 186 patents. And they're just one of like 23, 24. I'm trying to read that list. Like 24, 25 major global pharmaceutical players. Like names you haven't even heard of, names I can't fucking pronounce. Do you know what I mean? Like they're just crazy companies that they've sat for 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, holding patents for cannabinoids and for cannabinoid delivery systems. So we almost need these grassroots things, because like you say, Manchester does it differently. What would emerge in Manchester would be different to what Durham would do, would be different to what Glasgow does, would be different to what Portsmouth does,
It's involved as well, though. They invented doing things differently.
Yeah, left the Scousers out of that. They'd be well upset.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean? Like the flavour would be different. Whereas if we go down corporate legalization, all we're going to have is Starbucks and McDonald's. It'll be the same imported American cardboard terps, and it wouldn't have cultural vibes. You would literally just the same standard menu. It wouldn't celebrate local talent and flavor and really put money back into those local areas. So instead of it just going, oh, everyone's going to go to London because that's where the trendy weed is, or everyone's going to go here, and it puts it back into the local area, because you can grow the best of weed anywhere with the right environment, the right setup. You could be growing weed better than California in fucking, where's close to you guys, like Buxton or somewhere like that, in the clay, where they used to have all the clay and all that industrialness.
I've seen, it's probably the best weed I've seen in the world, all grown in Derbyshire.
There you go.
But yeah, and that's my point. And they could do that outside of every city. It doesn't need these huge logistics and all this huge other proliferal industry. If we let the people free and all of us suddenly like, we can do these things, it would naturally, organically evolve in the same way that your media company has. And I think it could regenerate in communities, like we say, by helping landlords, by filling all these spaces. People, instead of spending their money with Albanians, which, I mean, their basically general attitude is, I think it's 60-40 or 70-30 goes home. The majority of money leaves. And it's the same with the corporate big boys. When Trulieve and Curaleaf come and set up physical locations here, where do we think all that money's going to go? Whereas you boys set up a spot, you're going to live nearby. You're going to spend it in Tesco and whatever else. It's going to continue to stay in the local economy. It's not just going to fuck off to the Caymans.
Well, the thing is, though, with capitalism, say we did that and we got bigger and bigger and bigger, you get to a point where your business manager, your finance officers putting it in the Cayman Islands without you even knowing it. No one's going to say, right, stop now. The company's done well enough. It's the system that we're all born into. It's not a fair system at all. Best thing to do is make sure if you do make money, you're responsible with it, and you try and bring everyone up around you.
100%. I think that is the attitude to have with it. It's taken me a long time. I've obviously been a diehard kind of like burn it down, we'll live in the ashes, whatever it looks like for a long time. Slowly getting my head around this idea that, wait, if you have money, you can do shit with money. I'm going to lose my mind over this fucking...
You can fund someone to research stickier lights.
Yes, exactly. I could buy better studio lights. I'll plug my Patreon here, folks, if you do want to help me get a better fucking studio light. No, yeah, you're right. But I still can't help, and maybe I'm naive, I don't know, but I've seen it with enough individuals how consuming cannabis especially causes like metacognition and introspection, people to think about how they're thinking. If we scaled that up and 5 million people tomorrow were suddenly able to consume cannabis on the fucking high street or whatever, that's going to affect our consciousness. That's going to affect our wants and our desires. You guys have published, I've seen in an article about the study of sort of cannabis people are more empathetic, and another study of cannabis people are more drawn to nature, more likely to be environmentalists and conservationists. So I think, again, if we scale that up, I'm not saying we'd all suddenly become anti-capitalists, but I think we'd all kind of go, wait a minute, I don't mind everybody having money and shit, but why is that dude hiding 10 billion? Where is that 10 billion?
I wonder if it's a chicken and egg situation, though.
The people who are attracted to like cannabis and psychedelics probably have a degree of
predisposition.
Yeah, they're more likely to be empathetic because that's why they seek out substances that are kind of change your perception.
I can tell one anecdote. There was I'm not going to name him for my own public safety. There's a guy around here who was a major gangster for many, many years. Proper hard man, been stabbed up loads, been to prison, was just one of those quintessential geezer kind of guys. And he walked into a room with a bunch of lads smoking DMT in a pipe and went, you pussies, what's this like? Smoked the pipe and spent the next couple of weeks wandering around apologizing to people, meek as hell, literally like just being like, I'm sorry, I didn't know what I was like. Do you know what I mean? It overnight flipped him. Granted, about 4 or 5 months later, apparently, he sort of was falling back into things because he obviously didn't do the integration. He didn't integrate the lessons into his life and start changing his life. But he had that conscience and that awareness. But I think
I had a word with him.
Well, a lot of the studies that I've written about concerning psychedelics being used for the treatment of depression all state is for first 6 months, and then you need follow-up sessions, or even the first 6 weeks.
It's
very early. So it's more of a support system than a cure.
100%. I mean, all of it, whether it be, you fly to Peru and do the ayahuasca, whatever. The issue is, as we spoke of with Dennis Walker the other week, what was the analogy? I think he came up with the analogy of, if the fish tank is dirty, you clean the fish tank, you don't drug the fish. And my analogy was house fire. So basically what's currently happening with psychedelics and what they're trying to build as a system is we're all in house fires. They randomly come along, pull you out the house fire, give you psychedelics so they dose you out and put you out. And you're like, oh my God, I'm not on fire anymore. This is mint. You feel excellent because you're not on fire. But then you have to go back in the house because that's where you live. So then you get set back on fire again. So it's the lessons are individual, but they have to be applied collectively almost. I think that's the issue we're seeing with psychedelics is that they're fortifying egos. There's a lot of, your CEOs, think of what's happened to Burning Man over the past 10 years and what hellscape that became of fucking just the most narcissistic, powerful people in the world. Going, I took some mushrooms and actually I'm entitled to kill the 10,000 children that died in my factory. Do you know what I mean? They're just so disconnected from their own actions in the world. And I think not to make a moral judgment sort of against them, but if the tribe was also in that position, everybody, we'd all kind of be like, hey, why is Dave letting those kids die? Do you know what I mean? It would lift up the collective consciousness. Granted, to be in the bell curve of it, a lot of people that would fall off that, and some people that would be susceptible to temporary psychosis and even full psychosis type events. But but that's true of basically everything. You know, some people like alcohol isn't for me. It drinks and they go loopy. So, you know, you can have a temporary psychotic event after a bad relationship breakup, after a car accident. You know, trauma causes these sorts of things. So it's, rather than going, we need to protect those people by stopping all those other people, I think society would look a lot better of raising it up. And like you say, we wouldn't keep hitting that point, because then if we just went, all right, Sunderland, everybody in Sunderland, we're going to post microdoses of fucking psilocybin to, if they're over 18, observe them for 6 months and watch what happens. Watch the state of the high street.
Are you in on a secret government program?
I was just realizing.
The water.
Wait, that's one of the research projects that Sandoz and CIA looked at with destabilization of LSD as a military weapon. I mean, they also looked at using pheromones as a gay bomb to destabilize like masculinity. There's all sorts of weird. So these guys have been looking at these drugs. They've been weaponizing them over here, and this is what I brought up with Dennis Walker recently. Is they're telling us, oh, take this ketamine over a weekend infusement, yay! And what? How have you've got us to here? What other experiments are you doing? What crazy shit like you were doing under MK Ultra and Operation Midnight Climax and those kind of things, and now being applied now. So again, so I think citizen journalism, as it were, consumer journalism, as it were, is so important for these experiences. It's not just we're reporting on these studies that potentially could be biased through who's financed them and what the outcome they want to be. You know, oh, it just so happens, you know, this guy who owns a mushroom clinic, you know, funded this study and it found that his mushrooms work really well. Do you know what I mean? There's those intrinsic biases, whereas our lived experience is what has built those experimentation models. They only knew to try fucking ketamine for depression or DMT for depression because the people with depression took those drugs and went, oh, I feel less depressed.
There is actually a story of, I'm sure I've researched it and maybe wrote about it, so I can't remember all the details, but there is a story of how they found out ketamine worked for depression. And it's along those lines. It's also one of the safest drugs, or the safest drug. You can give it to children. One of my friends is an orthopedic surgeon, and they like to use it for minor operations. So they're having to set a bone back into place, et cetera, because they can get you out of the hospital much quicker. If they give you a local or general anaesthetic, they need a lot more aftercare. Ketamine, they can do the job, get you out.
Yeah, 100%. I will, just for harm reduction advice, clarify the statement there, intravenous ketamine. And that's not me encouraging fucking intravenous drug use. What I'm meaning to say is that the sniffing of ketamine, there is a crystallization mechanism. Obviously, we are seeing, you know, related issues with bladder.
We're talking over many, many years.
Oh yeah, we're talking like large occurrence. This isn't your average, just, yeah, you broke your leg, you're going to get the thing. But I'm just, again, for harm reduction advice, just clarifying, there's no one's going to go, it is the safest drug. Because look at David.
When I said it's the safest drug, I wasn't meaning go out and sniff it, kids. I was meaning in a medical.
Oh, of course. And I was just sort of clarifying because
medical, recreational lines.
But this is, again, where it kind of comes from. I've had mates that enjoyed sniffing ketamine at free parties and stuff like that. And then it started as a recreational thing. Then they sought it because it was the only thing that could help deal with their depression. It was the only thing that could help them deal with, you know, the day-to-day trauma of the existence of their life. So I think there's a fine line between sort of rec and, like, in the same way of, like, I'm prescribed cannabis. I am a legitimate cannabis patient. Here's my piece of paper. Yeah, I'm going to blaze blunts of organic home grow all day, every day. And it's, do you know what I mean? The lines are so blurry with these because it's not a standardized drug. The reason cannabis was abandoned as our go-to remedy was because of the creation of the or under my assumption and reading of history, is the creation of the hypodermic needle and the standardization of sodium chloride drugs. So basically made into salts and then dyed white. And it was like, look at this white powder. That is medicine. White powder is medicine. That became the standard. And sort of through that evolution, because like I said, cannabis doesn't standardize, and can it not standardize? Even if it did, we'd still have different effects. It doesn't fall into traditional triple placebo-controlled, blind placebo-controlled trials in that way, because the effects of the individual are so nuanced. Our endocannabinoid systems respond to it in different ways. And I think the same is true with psychedelics. They're trying to create the trip without the trip now, so that, like you say, well, you have this, we don't have to worry about your individual extreme experience, and then you're just cool for 6 months. Then you come back after 6 months and you do it again, and do you know what I mean? It becomes then like a maintenance drug. So I think that's
one of the main reasons that they're looking at doing that is similar to what I just explained about ketamine, and it's the aftercare. If you give someone mushrooms, there's a set period of time for studies where you have to look after the participants. I'm sure that's going to be the same in clinical settings as well, which is 12 hours. If you give someone LSD, you might have to look after them for 24 hours before you can let them go home.
can I clarify as to what you mean by look after?
You can't let someone go home when you've just given them hallucinogenic drugs.
While they're under the influence, or after they've become sober?
But to be sure, in a clinical setting, there's going to be a set amount of time, just as there is when you've had an operation and they give you a local or general anesthetic. Mm-hmm. So in a study, when they're administered psychedelics, the study has to go on for a certain amount of time, and a lot of the studies are run by students, and these students aren't paid. And it's one of the key restraints that stops the study of these sorts of drugs.
Yeah, well, I would agree that there is an issue of almost a lack of care of integration, because it's all well and good, the experience itself and then the come down, as it were. But generally, as I've found, and as I spoke of on a documentary with the BBC, that like it's LSD as like a positive hangover. Mushrooms, people tend to find the same thing. Second, third day afterwards, there is just kind of a glow, a general easing of life. And so most sort of psychonauts will tell you, basically, you need a neurological switch off. You need to sleep in order to finish an experience. So you can kind of go to generally something like acid, depending if it's actually acid, because so much LSD is adulterated. So you end up with basically a stimulant version, like 1P, or what's the other one? Can't think what the other one forms. Like just these things that end up as like they're 24 hours, you know, they're a real fucking thing. Whereas good quality acid will be in and out in like relatively about 12 to 14 hours. Do you know what I mean? Dependent on metabolism and sort of dependent on, I guess, experience as well as to what you would call like down. Do you know what I mean?
But I like how you describe acid as in and out. It's never been my experience.
No, it's in, but not quite out.
Well, no, but in terms, what I mean by that is not the effect. It's off the receptor so fucking like you metabolize LSD almost fucking instantly. It's so through you so quick. But yeah, the experience is the modulating effects on other systems. And I kind of agree with you to a sense, but then I'd also ask you the question, what happens at like 11, 12 every night, especially Friday and Saturday? All these drunk people, million of them, leaving pubs off their fucking tits, do you know what I mean? And moving back in through society.
Right.
Well, yeah, of course, there's consequences there, but then my point is just, I'm for equity.
You can't pay someone or ask someone to participate, say, here, take these drugs, and then thanks, mate, off you go.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why they're looking into developing these psychedelic drugs without the trip. I'm not making a comment on whether that's right or wrong. I don't know enough about it myself, but I'm just commenting on one of their motives for doing so.
I know, yeah, I can understand those, but I will always then fight back of going, that's already happening and is going to continue to happen. And I think, yes, in a medical setting, different thing because of liabilities, insurance, it being a paid for procedure, etc., standardization of procedure, all of the usual things that go with that. But then there's going to be this other side of all drugs. I mean, we're already seeing like the cocaine pilot that Bern in Switzerland are looking to put together. Amsterdam and Barcelona very much put some nods in their direction, going, we are very fucking interested in watching this.
Canada as well. There's a city in Canada that are doing so.
Yeah, and these are all popping off because Bolivia and Colombia are like, oh, we can just buy the cocaine from the cartels, and the cartels are like, we'll sell you it for the market rate that we would sell it out to. And when the government's actually checked this in Bolivia, I think the calculation was nearly $500 million in savings. And so if they just buy all that cocaine, Bolivia will be like, what the fuck do we do with all this cocaine? So I think that's why countries around the world go, we'll sell that cocaine for you. And so there's going to be this natural progression of all of these things, when at the same time, there is Numbrino, cocaine nasal spray just being developed by Johnson. can't remember the manufacturer. Johnson Johnson made a sketamine, which is the ketamine nasal spray, and they've made that not for you in a therapeutic setting with a male and female person, and then you get blindfolded and you get infusions. That's for literally you to carry on the go for anxiety. You'd go, I'm feeling anxious, shoot up some cat and go, oh, okay, cool. Like the lines are getting so blurred between what is medical and what, do you know what I mean? And as Dennis Walker brought, we're moving towards this like soma reality where there'll be a drug to numb every feeling. You will be in perpetual bliss because, oh, I don't like this. I'm feeling anxious. I'll take this one. Oh, I'm feeling depressed. I'll take this, take this, take this. Like these feelings are here for a reason. You know, it's like the same. You stood on a nail and you got it in your foot, and you're like, the pain, and you're like, oh, just numb the pain instead of going. Should get the board out of my foot at first, at least. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you make a good point about like the blurring lines between, you know, kind of what I mean. I always kind of sort of talk about like, you know, with cannabis, like, you know, plenty of people are just smoking weed at the end of the day because they're stressed, right? Or they've had a busy day, and or like the same people can come over and neck a bottle of wine. You know, like in theory, you could, based on the current criteria we have for, you know, medical cannabis, you could argue that you know, that bottle of wine at the end of the night is a treatment, right? Because you know, people are doing it, and there isn't a line. But you know, kind of, I think this is, you know, you say like, you know, or Dennis said we're moving towards this kind of soma lifestyle. Yeah, maybe in a way, but like, I think kind of the reason psychedelics got really popular again is because we, you know, for kind of people in the 30s and 40s now who have basically, you know, we're the children of the Prozac generation, right? You know, the Prozac was around in the 90s and it was prescribed to anyone, and it still is for everyone. You know, SSRIs, literally, you can walk into a doctor and go, I'm not feeling good. Have some SSRIs, I'm busy, right? And then people are like, you know, they're turning to that and they're spending years numbed. You know, like, I can't remember what is it? Yeah, I don't really get into kind of antidepressants.
I still can't remember.
That one, right? So
citalopram.
The side effect being like just not feeling depression or not feeling anxiety, but just not feeling. And it's that same with that weight loss jab that people are taking at the minute. It just or your desire for anything. And people are then, you know, the people literally getting to 18, 19, having anxiety, stress, depression, whatever, and they're having like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years on these drugs. And then, like, the reason I think, you know, people, as you say, we are humans and we need feelings. Feelings are what define us. They're what teach us lessons. And people are turning to psychedelics because they're like, well, fuck being them. Like, and then they do, you know, a mushroom trip or an Aya ceremony or whatever. And they feel everything and they feel it so intensely it comes out and they cry. And then the next day, like, literally those pathways are like blank slate. So you spend 10 years just flattening everything. And all of a sudden you just open this book and your heart and your body just goes, actually, yeah, that's fucking way better. And this is why I think we're seeing not, you know, all right, the commercial side of it is driving it, but this just, I think there's a societal, you know, especially in the West, there's a societal and human desire to for so many people having been numb for so long, because that is the medical solution. Like, not feeling happy, swallow those, you know, and if they don't work, we'll take 2 of them and add this one on and add this one on. And then people just go and have this feeling and, you know, you let everything out. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, actually, this is way better. You know, I instead of just like pushing it to one side and like burying it and never ever addressing it, I addressed it in beautiful, snot-teared, filled glory. And I poured my heart out to the universe and the universe smiled back. And actually, fuck yeah, that's way better than just taking a pill every day. That makes nothing.
You're sort of on the inside.
Yeah.
External factors can't influence internal factors. People spend a long time learning that lesson, myself included.
I think they can. It's just they shouldn't.
You can't fix them.
Well, yeah, exactly. You are only responsible for your own little corner of the world. I think you were talking about Huxley before. I think there's an Aldous Huxley quote, which is, I am ashamed after all of my years of work to discover that the only thing that I am capable of changing in this small corner of the universe is my own self. It's literally, I mean, all the Stoics, all your great philosophers, all your great teachers of any of your great traditions around the world come to the same sort of thing. There is only really the self. And that means that there is, I mean, when you take enough of these things, as I've kind of found, there is no other. So that means I am you and you are me. If I was born you, raised as you, and lived as you, I would be you. I would make every decision as you. I would speak as you. I would think as you. So therefore, there is only one. And therefore, I don't want to harm me. So why would I harm you? Because you are me. Do you know what I mean? I think that's where the passive tradition comes from most of the spiritual religions. Granted, there's a lot of fucked up shit like Buddhists in Myanmar and fucking Hindus in India at the minute and Christians and that conflict and every fucking there's a lot of religious drama right now. That's all I'm gonna fucking say. But the teachings at the core of these things, I believe, came from spiritual experiences related to psychedelics. I mean, there's numerous trials now that are showing DMT is released endogenously in the body through yoga, through breath work, through cold deprivation, as you say, that we're starting to biohack ourselves. And I think this is why I speak so passionately. And when I spoke with Dennis McKenna, he agreed with me as well. Of the trip is the solution, because it's not just, the feelings, you feel a bit better. Your brain needs to go through it. I've had, as I've spoken in the podcast before, I had an acid experience, I don't have many of them, one night where I was stuck in the bathroom and the sound of Austin Powers on the DVD player was so bright that I couldn't enter the room, the light of it, because it's noise. I had such synesthesia, and I went through this experience of living and dying of all of these creatures, and it completely fucked me up for weeks afterwards in a positive way, I would say. It like really shook me up to my core and made me challenge, and I had to rebuild every sort of decision consciously after that. But during the manifestations of the things, what I was doing was fighting my trauma. What I was doing, do you know what I mean? It's whether it forms as a dragon and you become a knight and you take this thing on. I'm obviously speaking in an embellished sense here, but you go through these manifestations within your mind. You have these car crash of thoughts and synergies, and it's your brain seeking to heal and give you alternative narratives. It's allowing you to revisit. This is why I think MDMA is so unbelievably powerful of a drug. It allows you to sit and cry with joy, regaling your worst trauma. Do you know what I mean? It's healing imbued into a fucking tiny pill, really. And I think each of these things have their own uses, you know?
Well,
Sorry, go on.
Sorry to interrupt. I said, especially when you're dancing for 12 hours, it really heals you.
100%. It brings together that sound, vibration, collectiveness, the loss of self, and the moving into that, what do we call it? It's like a hyper focus, but not what I can't remember what it's called. Flow state. Dancing is flow state. You flow with everybody else. You move, you undulate. Words lose meaning. Language loses meaning. It's one of those things. Again, the answer is in ourselves firstly, but the solution, I guess, to how we implement this is together. And I think that's one thing these drugs do more than, especially alcohol, tobacco, sugar, the things that are promoted in our fucking culture that separate us from each other, because they weaken our bodies, they weaken our mind and our spirit. Not to, again, diss anybody, everyone free choice of everything, but in terms of what you look at in terms of neurological studies, reduction of empathy, hypothalamic dysregulation, all sorts of things, there is disconnective elements to these, and they are quite, as all drugs can be, like selfish. Then you can become a bit of an addictive quality. So I think it's finding that right space for yourself that then we can't really dictate to others. And I think the only way to do that is a free society and an understanding society, in the same way you do with when you're out with your mates and you're like several in, you're like, wait, and Gary's too fucked. You want to be angry at him because he's just pissed in the corner of a pub and he's going to get battered, but that could be you next week, or it was you a year ago. So there's an empathy and understanding. And that's all I want, is that it may look bad and you may not like that, but that's their choice and right. And what we should do is be better to each other, provide that harm reduction, that education, and that be that better environment for each other.
Yeah, I mean, I have some really strong views on that, like about especially harm reduction, because we know for 50 years of prohibition hasn't stopped people taking drugs, right? We all kind of in the 90s when we had school drug education, literally take half a pill and you're going to die, and then kids go out and do that, and then they don't die, right? But the system we have at the minute, if you look at the law, that half a pill or that pill you had is in the same class as heroin. So there's a logic somewhere that people make and go, well, they lied to me about this pill, so this heroin thing can't be that bad, right? And it fucking, because the state of, the way prohibition is allowed synthetic opioids to enter the heroin market means that actually it's the risks to a human being taking a pill and trying smack are immensely different. And mushrooms are up there with crack and heroin. What the fuck? How does that come about? Right? So you create this kind of social, like this paradigm where you're saying to kids, if you try these drugs, they'll kill you. They try these drugs and they don't kill them. And then by association, they go, well, if this category says that this drug is the same as this, and this one wasn't harmless. And so I think as a society, you know, we've had a 50-year experiment of telling people don't take drugs, they're bad, and we go to prison. And for most people, 90, something between 90, maybe 95% of people who use drugs don't have a problematic experience. They don't have a negative experience, probably even higher, right?
Yes.
And but the ones that do have the problematic experience, you could reduce that number to probably 0.5% by creating a system that is based around harms. So, you know, like the tier of accessibility, the more harmful that a substance is to a user and to society, the more harmful that is, the harder it is to get, and the more guidance and supervision you will be required to be, you know, that level of interference increases with the harm.
All I was going to,
like I say, I think you'd find that 99% of people who use drugs, full stop, wouldn't come to any harm. But we have this system where actually we think we can just tell people off and that will solve it. And I don't understand why that just continues. How can we not look at human beings who use drugs and say, let's treat you with a little bit of compassion and say, how can we make your life a little bit safer? You know, most people don't get like a serious opiate addiction because they want to or because they think it's fun. They do it because of trauma and because of, you know, circumstances that they've ended up in, or you know, the way that society has treated them. And so then to look at them and go, actually, no, we don't give a shit about you. Just you can carry on being, you know, downtrodden.
We're going to put you in prison.
Yeah, we'll put you in prison because that will solve the problem. We'll let you go and buy some, you know, some adulterated smack, and that'll solve the problem. These things aren't solving the problem. This prohibition isn't solving the problem. This telling people drugs are bad, don't do them, isn't solving the problem. And I don't understand how we as a society, with all the information we have and all the data we have now, can still look at that, and the people who are making our decisions can go, yeah, let's just carry on with that because it's definitely working.
Yeah. No, you raised some brilliant points. One thing I will give you the opportunity, I suppose, to retract when I say what will happen if you did exactly implement that. Alcohol would be the hardest drug to access. Heroin, in supervised rooms around the world, there has never been an overdose. As you stated, the adulterated supply is the problem. During prohibition of alcohol in the States, tens of thousands of people died from alcohol poisoning. It wasn't because of the fucking alcohol. And granted, yeah, alcohol over long term is comorbid in like fucking 15 cancers and various other conditions. It still then has to become about the free choice. Like I said, by regulating alcohol at that level, what they did was remove all poisonings. And then by then taxing it, they took the tax to then create and pay to then reduce some of the harms of it. And so the same exact thing could be made of heroin, as you say. If then good quality, which is, it is a plant-derived drug, people have to remember this, heroin is not a problem. It is, as you say, adulterated supply, and no one taking heroin wants to overdose. It's like shandy absinthe. If they know that heroin is always going to be shandy, they'll always take it like it's shandy. If they suddenly get an absinthe, they're fucked, unless we've got naloxone or suboxone if you're in the States. Yeah. Or in somebody to help look after them. So if we truly created that level playing field, alcohol and tobacco look quite bad. And what it'll end up doing is causing problems. And I think we're already seeing a massive problem now. It's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about, is the disposable vape ban. So we're seeing like that. All it's going to do is, we know we've lived in prohibition. We know what's going to happen next year or the year after it's implemented. There will be millions of fake vapes on the market. And half of them won't have nicotine in. Some of them will have different addictive substances. You know what I mean? There'll be people trying to create and capture markets going, no, I want that knockoff Elf bar that really had a hit, and it turns out it's got spice in it. Do you know what I mean? We're seeing that with THC vapes and these other things. So there is the space, as you say, for that legal regulated market. But there also has to be the nuance and space for the different plethora of ways that these drugs are consumed. Think of, again, how alcohol is. It's everywhere. We didn't open up an alcohol restaurant and then leave the restaurant. You could just get alcohol at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Extrapolate that out, you get what I'm saying? And I'm not saying then we should have people fucking sniffing children's soft play areas. That's not what I'm saying. It's horses for courses, and study the public, find out what human behavior is on the mass, find where the problems are, and regulate the problems. Do you know what I mean? That's what we did with alcohol and tobacco and these other things. We know they still cause problems, but it's your choice as a free adult to make that decision.
Yeah, and you should have that choice, but be able to make that choice knowing full well that if you do make that choice, that, you know, you're doing so in the healthiest and safest way possible.
Informed consent.
I think it should be, that should, like I say, that the more state intervention, the more harm, based on the more harm. And I kind of take your point about alcohol, but I mean, I've kind of often argued that maybe the reason, I mean, we know that alcohol can be damaging if consumed in excess, right? But is alcohol's societal harms are they so high because, for want of a better option? Like, life's hard, man, right?
Yeah.
Most people want a fucking drink or a joint at the end of the day because, let's face it, anyone who goes through life stone cold sober and does it well, I applaud you. Life is hard for most people, right? Life is a struggle. I mean, we all want something. And I don't think it's actually a failing to want something to take your mind off the society we live in, right? It's, even if you've got plenty of money, you've still got big problems. But is alcohol societal harms, at least, and maybe even harms to the human, because it's the only thing we've got, really, legally. It's the only thing I can walk into the shop across the road and buy is a couple of bottles of wine on a Friday night when I've had a shit week. My missus is saying the same thing, like, let's just get a couple of bottles of wine, right? If, next door to that alcohol shop was a cannabis dispensary or a mushroom shop, on a Friday, would I look at it and go, you know what, I'm not really that fussed about the bottles of wine tonight. I'm going to get some weed, or I'm going to get us a couple of grams of mushrooms each. We're going to giggle it out, right? Is society's problem with alcohol because alcohol is the only option? I don't know. I think maybe.
I think it's socioeconomic, isn't it? Yeah, because it is created because of the structure of society, and it's actually worsened as you go up the scale. If you look at prenatal alcohol syndrome, that is highly prevalent within more of the upper classes. And then when you look at sort of drug problems, if you then consider it to be the reason you end up with so many lower class people caught up is if you're suddenly, you've got 100 grand in the bank and mommy and daddy support you and help you out and whatever else, and you develop a coke problem, there's a long period of time before you need to go rob a granny on the street to make your fix. Do you know what I mean? You've got a lot of resource to burn through in that problematic space. And it's a lot more likely that it's not going to be public facing. Whereas if you're already in deprivation or whatever else, it's where we ended up with that whole thing of went after like Frosty Jacks drinkers and White Lightning drinkers, and they demonized the cider homeless. And as you said, they pushed all of these things that you're talking about onto that group, but ignored everybody else's consumption. But the point is that falling off at the end is society's fault. That's not to say that a person isn't without blame, but it is to say that the point of society is to make sure that fall off doesn't happen. So for that 95 whatever percent, the 5% or whatever we want to call it, of people that suffer problematic drug use, and that's not to say that it's only that 5%. Anybody at any time could have a period of, you're like, I drank heavy for 6 months and was really in a shit place. And then whatever, it's not, you're not an addict and always an addict sort of thing. People fluctuate, the same with food, with sex, with anything the human body enjoys and responds to. I think we just, as we say, have that bit better acceptance and empathy for each other. We all sin, we just sin differently. You know what I mean? But to answer your question, I think it would be differentiated if there were other drugs entirely. Yeah. And like I said, it sounds controversial because of the stigma around heroin. But actually, heroin is a much safer drug than alcohol long term. It sounds fucked up, but in terms of to your physiological health, it will not fucking kill you at a pure rate. There's a lot of other drugs that we perceive as having these huge harms, that those harms have been massively exacerbated, like you said, because of prohibition. Yet these drugs often work so specifically to a subsection of people that fall into either specific traumas or specific health conditions, physical or mental. And by demonizing the way that they numb their pain is demoralizing, it's dehumanizing. And so I'm trying to always interject these conversations wherever I'm having them with an argument against drug supremacy, of going that we need to not ban anything. I'm pro fucking pulling back the restrictions on tobacco. I know that sounds controversial as shit, but if they can do it for one, they'll do it for all. It's the censorship argument. We have to be mindful that I don't sin that way, but I can't tell that sinner he suddenly can't have his drug. Because what happens if we ban tobacco? We end up with a black market of fucking tobacco. All we do is empower a criminal market. They end up with an adulterated product or a worse product. Their health declines. It's the same with banning abortions. The exact numbers in the States say the same. The only thing you do by making it illegal is make that more unsafe. So we can extrapolate from that, as you say, that decriminalize the people, regulate the supply, understand the culture and consumption, and like I said, regulate that. To the consumers themselves and people who've had a history in this space, it seems obvious. But like you said, once the money men get in and they're like, how much are these mushrooms worth? How much is this ketamine worth? Lads, invest. Do you know what I mean? They turn it into a commodity, and we're almost fetishizing drug use of being like, oh, I went to Peru and I had ayahuasca. When there's kids on the block you live on the house their houses are getting raided because they're growing weed. Do you know what I mean? Or the guys next door are getting stopped because they've got a little bit of coke in their pocket. Do you know what I mean? The hypocrisy of these things, it's really unsettling to me that for all there is this renaissance, it's who's in charge. You know, MAPS just turned from being a 30-year non-profit, oh, we're going to help free the mushroom, to, oh, we're a for-profit pharmaceutical company now, by the way, lads. Do you know what I mean? It's...
Yeah. No, I agree to an extent. I think it's kind of, you know, I'm in an ideal world, I'm kind of where you're at, like, you know, we should legalize everything. We should protect people based on.
I didn't say legalize it, decriminalize it, at least, and legally regulate.
But also, the practical side of my brain says you're never going to get there without capitalism.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Like for most things that be supplied, like you can't grow your own ketamine at home. There isn't going to be a home grow problem of ketamine challenging that industry. Ketamine is going to be very valuable. Same with mushrooms. So in Oregon, I'm trying to read the numbers again in my head. I remember what I said last time on the podcast. I think it was 1.4 grams for about $4,000.
Yeah.
Whereas you can grow a little kit at home and you can flush after flush, ounce after ounce. Do you know what I mean? It's they're going to inflate where they can, but things like mushrooms that are easily grown at home, so easily, cannabis so easily grown at home, like coca leaf, a much longer investment, but people would then put them in the gardens if they were in the right area geographically. Same with opium poppies, like they grow everywhere in this country, wild. No one gives a flying fuck. A couple of weed plants and your door's going off.
Yeah,
I'd like to see homegrown ketamine. You know, like those crystal kits you got when you were a kid, and you put like a string in some water.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It's not a fun thing to sort of to watch or to smell, but the guys that get it from the vet's bottles and you cook it. You cook it into crystals, and it is a very like
salt suspended water, and you're evaporating that off.
I'm not going for Lou.
No worries. Feel free to go, and I'll continue to speak to Liam, and we're going to talk about you behind your back. So what's Kevin worse at? No, I'm joking. Obviously. I'll not keep this too much longer. About another half an hour, if that's cool.
Yeah, man. I reckon so.
Yeah, sick. One of the things I did want to sort of talk to you about is, and I think it's probably something like you said you touched on before because of your experience with sort of SEO. How have you found censorship online, and how do you find yourself having to construct narratives or like even like headlines and things like that in certain ways to avoid like artificial restrictions?
No, I mean, I've kind of given up on Facebook. Like we post on there out of obligation, but you know, Facebook only want you to post things that you're prepared to spend money on, but they won't let us spend money on it. So kind of that's where we're at. Like from an SEO perspective, no. Like obviously, I put a lot of thought and effort and energy into like, you know, what a title is. Try not to be too clickbaity, but you've also got to try and attract people's attention, right? But like when it comes to SEO and general headline writing, you know, just kind of trying to get over the point, the key point of the article. And I know on Instagram there's kind of, especially within, you know, kind of the American companies that have, you know, kind of where there is a bit more of a commercial kind of, you know, like a social media team or whatever. And there's a lot of talk of like how you can get around Instagram censorship. And we just don't, because what's the point, right? I mean, I get it. I get why people would want to, but I'm kind of, I don't want to put like an upside down exclamation mark in a word, or like kind of, I find it frustrating. And I think if we all kind of just carried on doing what we're doing and just talking naturally and normally, then actually eventually Instagram are going to just kind of catch up, you know, kind of en masse. If the industry just agreed to just say it as it is, let's stop trying to hide it. Let's stop trying to cheat the algorithm. Let's stop trying to pretend we're not saying something. You know, like talking about MDMA. Put MDMA, don't put MD full stop MA. Just do it. Just let's all do it. Let's all just take a stand and say, look, guys, we are providing education information from a harm perspective. You know, we're trying to educate people and let them make informed choices. You know, we're all grown-ups here. You know, if everyone just did that and accepted it, then we'd maybe get like kind of, you know, the likes of Instagram to change their policies a little bit faster, because at the minute, as far as Instagram's concerned, that, you know, if everyone starts masking and hiding the words and changing, you know, the way they spell something to stop detection, Instagram aren't getting the point. Like, you know, hang on a minute, there's a lot of people engaging with a lot of posts where the word cannabis is mentioned. So actually, maybe we do need to adjust our algorithm. But the minute they're not getting that data and not seeing those complaints that, you know, a post was edited or removed because it's not happening because people are playing this silly kind of cat and mouse game. So no, we don't. It's probably more my personal bugbear. But I'm like, no, we're going to say what's in this article, what this post is about. We're not going to try and hide it. And so far, we've got away with it. So
lush, that's music to my ears. I am obviously a stickler for language, for fucking definitions of words and kind of the way that they're interpreted, both like in legalese, colloquially, and sort of in their dictionary definition. So to hear that you're using those words, I think my main bugbear is it draws a line artificially, and it goes, if you're in the group and you know what we're talking about, you're cool and you move forward. Whereas anybody new kind of hits this wall. They can't go, oh, what do we say it on? Oh, is it we or you, I that we're doing on TikTok to get around weed? You know,
I'll allow that one because I quite like it.
Yeah, but that was clever. Yeah. So but the point is that if you didn't know to search that word for weed, you wouldn't get into that space of weed or broccoli like they were trying to do on Instagram for a while or whatever it was. And so it keeps that knowledge esoteric, and it creates a narrowing community that doesn't grow from new interventions. Do you know what I mean?
And that goes right against what we're trying to do, right? So,
100%. It reduces the seriousness of it. Again, I'm incapable of being monetized, so I'm quite happy to say words like sexual assault, rape, suicide, murder, death. Do you know what I mean? These words are supposed to be impactful and powerful. When you hear them, something in you goes, "Oh, it's supposed to." That's what the word is for. That's why we all went, that word, cool, because it means that thing, and that thing isn't nice. Do you know what I mean? But if we then, fluffy, and I unalived, like, I'm sorry, no, the people then doing that so you can monetize your channel or whatever, I can't help but have at least a small amount of contempt for you, because you're not truly being authentic and real to the space. So to hear you sort of champion that, I think is wonderful. I mean, Instagram has got a problem. A mate pointed out to me yesterday. There's some bot farm has figured out breastfeeding video farming. And so there's been bots just uploading women with fake children getting their breasts out, and it's linked to like OnlyFans and porn sites and whatever else. And these accounts are just mass appearing, and people are mass reporting them, but they're just mass appearing. And then obviously since the fucking genocide in the Middle East, the number of dead children, all these images of dead people, dead children, people blown apart, they're really struggling with all these real depictions of things over this sort of way. And you think, why can't we use these fucking words? As you say, I think they'll know, and there'll be a metric. And I think if we can tip it over that edge where they go, it's starting to cost us ad revenue now. That's as soon as it becomes that, as you say, that they go, wait a minute, all these cannabis people, we can advertise to them. Because I mean, Meta is already kind of doing this. On my Facebook marketplace, I am constantly, every other post is somebody selling weed or mushrooms with like sponsored links.
Nice. I've seen a few people doing it on mushrooms. Gaming the system, like changing the ad after. Yeah,
but it's the exploitation there of it. We shouldn't have to do that. Do you know what I mean? With any of these things, we should have those authentic spaces to be able to just go, I would like to try ketamine. Google it. And it not just be propaganda or bullshit or this is academically acceptable or this is like, do you know what I mean? It's got to be meaningful information, actual harm reduction information and benefit maximization information. It's all well and good going, this might do this if it goes bad. We have to tell people what these things can do if they go good. There's a difference between saying what they actually will do on a statistical probability case by case basis. Is twinned with this, because otherwise they're going to believe their mates that, I'll take this pill and I'll see unicorns or this or that. And so they go to media and go, what's acid? Think of your average TV media depiction of what an LSD experience is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
jumping out of the window. That was the one I remember from when we were kids. If you take acid, you're going to jump out a window because you think you can fly.
Yeah, or like the walls start to melt physically, and you can have obviously distortions and whatever else and synesthesia and various things at different levels with these substances, but it's not a real preparation for what they can do. So then so many people struggle with LSD and high dose mushrooms because they're told it's fluffy and la, and this was my experience. But at heavy doses, these things can just fall onto you. That experience I was telling you about, I was filling caps, like hundreds of canna caps with canna oil. And I just, every time I got it in my hand, I'd like lick it off or take it. So I ended up having a block in an enzyme in my liver that when I took the acid, it fucking, I think it was 300 mics, completely blew my head off. A mandala physically like appeared in the room in front of me, closed my eyes, still fucking there. And it was just this like, I'm in trouble. And I'm a veteran of these drugs, but it was just because it was so instant. My brain was like, I'm going crazy. And I had to talk myself into, all right, strap yourself in. This is going to be a long night. But if people don't have those stories and people talking about these experiences, how can they have that expectation to not then lead themselves into these so-called air quotes bad trips?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, you know, one of the websites that kind of I've always thought was amazing and about drug and Arrowhead, where they publish, you know, it's kind of very factual. You know, as a young man, that website was like a Bible to me, like, you know, what, if I'm going to try this is what I can expect. And they did exactly that. You know, they have glowing experiences and they have the train wrecks. You know, so you read about a substance. And one of my favorite things to still do is go on and read like train wrecks from like Datura and, you know, kind of like, you know, kind of deliriums like that, because, you know, I would never consume one of those substances based on the fact of what I've read on Arrowhead. And that is harm reduction in a nutshell. Like, tell people the truth and they can make a decision. I would never try Datura because the idea of the trips I read on that on Arrowhead are just insane. They're incredibly fascinating from a neutral, you know, kind of story reading and interest in just in kind of altered states in general. But, you know, yeah, you know, as a young man reading about that, like, that's off the list. And that, you know, that's what you say. If you give people access to the information, they will make sensible decisions for the most part.
Same with the book that's been published called The Drug User's Bible. I can't remember the name of the author, Dominic's one.
Oh, right. The guy who just took
1,500 substances, documented it in quite a clinical, scientific way. But the one drug out of all 1,500 he said he'd never do again and highly recommends nobody else to do is nutmeg. And you and I tried to take it a long time ago.
Yeah.
On a Sunday morning around your brother's house.
Yeah, it's very young man, yeah.
But it was like eating sawdust, and thankfully we didn't eat enough of it for it to be.
No, I woke up because it took ages to kick. I woke up and I was in a bit of a state. I was like, wow.
2 and 8.
Again, I wouldn't recommend eating
sawdust.
8 teaspoons of sawdust either.
No.
Well, it's like you say, it's the more access to good food there, actually that's maybe a bad analogy. I was going to say the more access to good food there is, the less likely there'll be bad food and the more people will sway towards the good food. But again, as you say, that's not kind of how capitalism works. But I think taste and experience are two different things. Like, and you know, eating anything is going to fill you. If you eat enough of it, you'll feel satiated. Do you know what I mean? Whereas because, like I said, the drugs experiences are so different, it is horses for courses. And if you know these substances, you can literally be like, I want this for this, or I can add this to this, and I know roughly I'll get this. Or if I don't, as you say, I've read these bad experiences. What do they all come to? It passes. That's the one thing I literally had to say to myself, cuddle in my fucking bath mat, like in the bathroom on the floor, was like, it's just drugs. It's just drugs, kid. It's just drugs. Do you know what I mean? Just keep saying to myself, oh, like, it's fine. It'll pass. Yeah, literally. But every time you come back, be like, I don't know what's because my bathroom's got no daylight. And so you shut the door and it's completely blackest of black. And so I didn't know how long I'd be in there. And because, again, the synesthesia was, everything was bright. There was just colors and lights, and I couldn't interpret anything properly. And so just going in and out of these kind of like almost dreamlike states, and then sort of coming back from it being like, oh no, what the fuck? I'm thinking I'd woken up and I've lost my mind, and then going, oh, it's drugs, and then having that giggle and kind of getting lost again in that loop. You can build that experience, but I built that experience the hard way with no resources. And then through just trial and error of a lot of things, kind of went, okay, this works, this doesn't. And then in latter years, when I've got sort of professional, sort of quasi-professionally involved in this space, I've obviously learned quite a lot more. But it's so individualized. And even then it's down to what did you eat that day? Because there are so many foods that will affect liver enzymes again, that it affects metabolism of the drug. So like, because I had all those canna caps, that 300 mics that I was used to being like, oh, this is fine, a bit of a giggle, a few hours in, I can get back to watching documentaries and stuff, and I can have to go outside and not feel too fucked up. And because that meant all of it, it didn't slowly take in as I metabolized it. It kind of built to a wall and broke over. And it was that shock of sort of the experience. And like I said, this is why we need more resources for people. And I think that's not just heroin. And even now they're doing like phone lines in the States and stuff that you can ring if you're tripping too hard, or they're developing chat bots as well and things like that. I still think what you guys are doing with bringing the education, the awareness, and so the academia and the scholastic pursuit into that cultural space, so that you're not telling the people, oh, this is, and do this, but you're giving them the opportunity, like you said, to make an informed choice with informed consent, you know?
Yeah, so I'll give you an exact example of how that works, right? So one of our good SEO articles is about a UK recipe for canna butter, because most times you type in canna butter as a recipe, you'll get US kind of cups and measures, right? So we've done a metric one. And within that, there is a section on, if you haven't tried edibles before, even if you smoke weed, it's a different experience. It lasts longer, it can be more intense, and as you say, it can be based on what you eat. And that's a classic example of kind of what we do and can do with that content, right? We can write content that serves a purpose. People want a recipe, that they can go to take to Tesco or whatever. But also, a lot of people try edibles as the first time of trying cannabis, because, and this again is this broader audience, for people who don't know how to skin up, they don't know, but they can buy some butter, they can melt some butter in and put some decarb cannabis into it, and they can infuse their own brownies. And that might be their first experiment, or, kind of like branching out, or it might be someone who has managed to get cannabis but doesn't know or want to smoke it, but they've never tried it before. So we've got to have that kind of information in there. Like, look, if you're going to do this, here's the recipe, but just beware, like, have a quarter of your slice of brownie before you start eating 4 of them, because otherwise it might start traveling through time. So yeah, it works. Give people access to information and educate them along the way.
Maybe we should put recipes in a magazine.
Ooh, magazine.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were talking about dates earlier, weren't you? So by the time, today, for everyone who's listening to it, it should have launched. We are launching, and this is kind of what, does tie back into the thing I was just waffling on about educating different people and broader people. So, there's definitely printed materials out there for printed magazines for people who are embedded in the cannabis culture. Weed World, you mentioned, is probably the best the longest serving in the UK. And there's a few more on the continent. But as I say, a lot of people don't associate themselves, they don't see themselves in that culture. And as we have done with Leafie Online, one of the ideas we had was to do a print magazine, very kind of glossy, kind of normal size, should be going on shelves. So yeah, but whoever is out there listening to this, we've just launched it. So we're doing it as a crowdfunder to kind of raise the funds to get it out there. Although, to be honest with you, the majority of it is done. And it's going to be essentially an extension of Leafie, right? It's going to be longer stories, which is great because, find people's attention span online can be quite short. You're reading an article on your phone and WhatsApp goes, you go to the WhatsApp message and you stop reading.
Yeah,
so, something tangible, people can sit down, they can have a cup of coffee with and read and immerse themselves. So yeah, if you are listening to this, check it out, go on to Leafie and have a look and see if it's your sort of thing. But again, we're hoping that by doing something tangible, people can share it in a different way. People can say, oh, look at this article. People can, people might come across it on a shelf in a shop, and we've tried to make it look, like the front cover is quite appealing and a bit different and a bit arty, because we think that, if you're in a shop and you pick that up and you're like, well, what's this? Oh, it's a story about edibles. Oh yeah, I take edibles. This is interesting. Oh, there's stuff about mushrooms and rheumatoid arthritis in here. My dad's got it. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to take it home and eat it. I'm going to say to my dad, look, this person tried magic mushrooms and it, reduced the symptoms of RA. We've got that. Why don't you give it a try? So, this is the idea of trying to get that information out into more people. And, Instagram isn't helping us. Facebook isn't helping us. So, if we can't use their audience, we'll go and find it somewhere else. And as you say, they're probably missing out there, because if we would, if we were on able to advertise on Facebook, we probably would have done. We would have done that to try and reach new people, but we can't. So we did a magazine instead. Yeah, and also good sport it.
Magazines are becoming a lot more popular again. People want something, as you said, tangible, something they can put on a coffee table, something with a collectible sort of thing. I used to love collecting Mix Mag when I was younger.
Yeah, and it's
Loaded, FHM.
It's that mindfulness thing. Like, you're going to sit down and do something. You're going to put your phone on silent. You're going to read something. Yeah, like, at the end of every day, I put my laptop down. And the thing that clears my mind the most is picking up my Kindle and reading. And it gets me into a different zone. And I think, we can do that with a magazine. We can give people something. People are coming, kids that have grown up online, Gen Z kids, they're loving buying stuff from the 90s. They're loving buying vinyl, which was once a dead format. And magazines are having that kind of, that moment of like, I don't want to just be endlessly scrolling. I want to do something else. I want to feel something. I want to touch something. I want to go and sit outside for 2 hours, with a spliff and a magazine and a coffee, and like really just have a good couple of hours off the fucking world. I don't want, someone to text me and interrupt me to tell me that I've forgotten something, or I need to be somewhere, or, I don't want a marketing message about buying something, or a letter from O2, and a text from O2 saying your bill's this much this month. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. Hopefully it'll, people will agree with us that having something physical is a pleasure.
Yeah, man. No, nice. I think it's a good wise step, because, as you say, the physical market, a lot of people are starting to understand. This will segue quite well into my next question. A lot of people will currently understand, or currently beginning to understand, rather, the limitations of stream services. So a lot of people that rewatched Scrubs when it appeared on, I can't remember which platform it was, were shocked when all of the music was different. So these moments they remembered from fucking nostalgically 10, 15 years ago, how long the TV show was, the music was completely different and jarring. And because they didn't have the license for the music, they had the license for the show, but they couldn't license the music set to replace the music. And so people are then seeing, obviously, with different sensibilities and whatever else. So they're going, watch this movie, it was released in the 90s. And they're like, where's loads of it? The Friends, for example, TV show on Netflix, shitloads of that missing. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They've got like 4 or 5 missing episodes. South Park, same, several missing episodes. So unless you own them, or you go into a darker corner of the internet, you're not going to get access to. So physical media, as you say, is growing of people that want to hold something in their hand that can't change when they look away. Do you know what I mean? That magazine, when they've bought it from you, that's locked in time. Do you know what I mean? When I go back to it, it's there. It's what I'm hoping to do with the podcast, in a way, is going, go to that episode, to that person. They'll tell you the truth themselves. They were there. And so you're creating this chronology of events and this sort of catalogue of history for people to look back through, and to be able to kind of plot a foundation of where we are. So I think physical print media is so important. I think there's a magazine that was launched recently called, is it The Face? Maybe mixing that up with something else, but it was a project done by, I think, Simon Doherty, who was from Vice Reporters.
Right there.
Yeah. So there is that, like I said, that resurgence for it. And advertisers, again, they want to hit their audience. The people who are buying your magazine are not going to scroll past your magazine. Do you know what I mean? They've got to your magazine because they want what's in your magazine. Whereas on the internet now, it's a fucking mishmash. The adverts and the things that are generated because of the censorship, the things I actually look at, that data is not translated into the advertiser revenue, because they're going to advertise me weed adjacent products. So I end up with shit that has no relevance. So their value drops. Whereas the companies then advertising a print magazine that's only exposed to their demographic, it's 100% fucking odd. Do you know what I mean? So there's a win-win for that, the capitalist model within it, to cultural representation. And as you said, I think the longer format stories and the things that people can actually really go back to. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, proudly show, again, people that wouldn't, they're not going to look at it on the phone. They're just going to see it as another blur of bullshit. And again, having the respectability of being on a shelf in a high street, you're reaching an entire new demographic of people. Already the people that know the culture are going to come to you and find you anyway through the internet pathways. But for that new audience, that novice, the nascent consumer or potential consumer, the curious. Yeah, so I think it's a good pivot, and I'll include links to anything that you've got online and what you're doing. Obviously,
only £10, guys,
and ad slots are available.
Yeah,
I like that little comment about the advertising, but yeah, it is a good point though. It's a hyper relevant audience that are focused on that thing at the time.
Talking about focus, I've got ADHD. My tablet, I take my tablet early in the morning, 6:15. Only allows me to focus for a certain amount of time.
That's we'll wrap up. I'll ask my two last questions and then I'll allow you to. It's one of the reasons why people are always like, why do you smoke so much? Is that I smoke 2 joints because I also have ADHD, and it helps narrow me enough to keep me in between the parameters for a couple of hours each week. So I suppose my lead on question from the previous point was about AI, which we kind of answered there as well in a thing of why physical media is becoming so important. Any old dick can put up a couple of prompts into a chat, whatever, bot, and get an article that can move and whatever, but it doesn't have the same meaning and spirit and soul. Whereas then, like I said, as we were talking about earlier, these authentic voices, it's that I can see that getting lost in this wave of AI generated content and media in the not too distant future. So again, I think physical media is kind of the answer to that. So yeah, you kind of answered my point.
Yeah. AI, the thing is with AI as it is in the minute, it's not human, and humans recognize human. Like humans make mistakes and humans develop habits that AI can't. So when you read an article that's AI, it's clearly AI.
Yeah,
it's formulaic. Whereas humans will make little mistakes, have gaps and tone, and you can't. In a minute, you'll know. Oh, well, I don't ever think you'll ever be able to replicate that. So yeah, we're not worried about AI too much.
And AI can't have a cultural understanding that comes from being alive 40 years, to be in the industry, being part of it, living the life. AI would never be able to replicate that now, no matter how good it gets.
That's reassuring. That's wonderful to hear.
We don't use AI.
No, it's not. I think like people need to use it as a tool, right? Use it to inspire you or to help them create a structure. Like the same way that Photoshop helps people or Illustrator help people create images, right? Photoshop doesn't do the hard work. You have stuff to move pixels around. You just have to draw Bezier curves in Illustrator. You're just using a tool. Use AI. People need to use AI as a tool, not as a solution. And the ones that are using it as a solution are just falling into a trap of just being the same as everyone else using AI. And yeah, I think I personally, as a content consumer, I know, and I find it obvious when something's AI generated, and just that human element is still missing, and it's not a threat to us, and it's not something we'll be embracing. Put it that way.
Okay, I hope that remains the situation. I don't know, maybe it was being raised on movies like Terminator and shit. I just can't help but get a little bit worried.
All I read really is sci-fi, right? And so I love what AI could be, and I'm not going to get into it because of Kev, the singularity and like kind of AGI and all of that. But yeah, like I love what tech can help humans do, but I think the core of it it's still going to be humans.
Yeah, I agree. You can't hire a hammer to build your house, but you can definitely use one. I think it's the direction we pointed at. And like I said, the capitalists are very much, or some forms, and they're going, we need ad revenue. So if we generate these articles that do this creates this and money. But as you say, it just becomes self-decreasing until there's nothing. And we're looking at it and it's just a bit of taste in the palate. Whereas good quality content kind of leaves you like, oh, Christ, more, I need to jump. You know what I mean? It's like eating something really sweet and overly refined, and you're like, oh, that's good. That's fucking good. That's what we need more of in this world. So yeah, I'll ask you my final cliched question, gentlemen, which is, what does the future hold for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the magazine's a big leap of faith. I've had a few people say like, Print's dead. I mean, it isn't, but so it's a big leap of faith, but we're confident it's going to do well.
Rolling papers.
We've got we've got a new brand. So we created these. So we've got our own rolling papers. They're on the website if people want to try them. They were a product of your love. Kev ringing me up and going, right, I'm trying all these different brands. And literally like 3 joints, like, right, that one's all right. So, a lot of product testing went into them. And we've been kind of using them as promo material, sort of, and, way people can support us a little bit. We never ask for donations or anything to keep us alive. We always thought, like, if you're going to give us something, we want to give you something back. So the rolling papers are kind of like an extension of that. And they've got a QR code where people can find. So we're giving them out at like $4.20 in that. And people were buying them and trying them and stuff, and kept messaging us like on Instagram, like, these are really, really good. Like, they're up there in my top, 3 papers. So we're developing that. We're going to have some new ones coming out. It's a whole new design. It's almost it's a Leafie product, but it's developing a little character and voice and style of its own. And then what does the future hold after that?
We're going to take over the media space. Grow from there.
Yeah, more content, more breadth. I think, kind of tapping into, as I mentioned really early on, and we talked about that Venn diagram of, people who consume drugs, they're, most people consuming cannabis and psychedelics, they're into wellness. A lot of people using CBD and cannabis for sport, and cannabis is making inroads in sport. So trying to overlap, kind of the lifestyle, culture, health, certain, I have in my mind a picture of what people are doing, as well as smoking weed, as well as taking mushrooms or whatever. So we want to kind of spread our wings a little bit with culture content and lifestyle content. But obviously, what we do, it will still be at the core. And then after that, who knows?
We've got a few other ideas up our sleeve.
We've got nothing but ideas. But yeah, we'll see which ones come to fruition.
Excellent. Yeah, very much sounds like you're only on page 1 of that notepad you were describing at the start there, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Quite interested to see what's towards the back when, you're on a trajectory. I wish you all the best with it. And like I said, we'll get you back on in the future to, see if AI's taken over the world, if print worked and how things are advancing. Because, I wish you the best of luck with it. And I think you're making some right decisions. I think people need to understand the money and the potential in the culture, and people want to represent what they've not been allowed to say or do for years. Do you know what I mean? They want to wear it proud. They want to be seen in it. They want to share it, and pioneers are going to be rewarded as always. That first comer advantage. So best of luck.
We want people. We want that net of people who feel like they are well informed enough to be kind of educating their friends, and like to feel like, if we can make someone believe that cannabis is for them who doesn't fit into like a stereotype or a certain audience, we think that audience deserves to be bigger. Like, there should be more people. There should be more people championing things like cannabis and psychedelics, because if we allow them to do that, then the support gets bigger because that net is bigger. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, trying to get more and more people interested, informed, and then they can do the education, they can pass it along, and from there we can make changes to the world. So yeah, that's
changes for the better.
Just more of that, basically.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds like a great journey. I suppose last thing then is, where can people keep up with you guys? Here's your plugs. Get your plugs in.
Yeah, Leafie.co.uk is the website. Team Leafie on all our socials. It's Leafie, not FY. And then kind of that's where to find us. You can join our newsletter if you come onto the website. As you say, we'll drop the links below to the crowdfunder for the magazine, so pick that up. And like and subscribe, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Excellent. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I look forward to bumping into you in a couple of weeks in Spanners.
Yeah, see you at Spanners, man.
Yeah, see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Peace and love, guys.
Bye.
All right, bye. Well, there you go, folks. That was Kevin and Liam from Leafie. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned something about the guys. And Leafie, if you didn't know about it, obviously as a resource, check out in the links below their website. They do some good work. I've written a couple of articles, maybe be writing a couple more in the future. Who knows? But yeah, they're a good resource, and they're trying to cover a good breadth of sort of the culture and the industry and sort of the most recent developments within research and sort of academic circles. So yeah, I'd check them out. I would recommend checking them out. Yeah, if you enjoyed this podcast, folks, please do give us a like, share, subscribe, a thumbs up, a rating, whatever it is you do on your platform of choosing to enjoy this podcast. That shows your appreciation. I greatly appreciate it, and you. Check out theSimpalife.com for more details, more content, exclusive articles, and blogs. Check us out on all social media platforms at The Simpa Life. If you really enjoyed this podcast and you want to support this project going forward, please do check out patreon.com/The Simpa Life, where for less than a cup of coffee a month, you can help me keep the lights on this little project. You've been wonderful, folks. Hope you are having a great week, and you continue to have a wonderful time. Be good to each other. I'll see you next week with somebody. It'll be awesome. You'll love it. I'll love it. All right. Stay beautiful. Peace and love.
Congrats.
Thank you, Zoom lady.
We just ruined that.
That's all right. So you heard the Zoom lady's voice and you're like, no, leaving. I did not agree to be on camera.